welcome to the second of the Fieldwork 5 minutes sessions that I'm offering for National Fieldwork Fortnight. Now, the second theme I want you to think about is the idea of observations. Now, I've just been walking around and just noticing the flora and the fauna, but the flora particularly around where I'm working. And I've looked at the grass, I've looked at the bushes, I've looked at the trees. But it was this patch of grass that in particular caught my eye. So you can see the zoomed in image on the right hand side, and then in the center, you can see the other image. So in the foreground, you can see the shadow of the roof, the shadow of the building, casting its shadow at about 9:30 in the morning. And then you can see the patch of ground that is full of buttercups, bristling, bustling, full of those bright yellow buttercups. And in the background, you can see the hedge that's been clipped, quite closely clipped. So this starts to make me think about No Mow May, that campaign to stop us closely cropping, closely cutting every little bit of grass in sight. Certainly, I've noticed areas near me where No Mow May was happening in May, but now it's June, they're starting to cut again. So the idea of those areas being left wild is certainly not something that people are prepared to see for the whole year. But I just wanted to look more carefully at this particular patch and just to think about the fact that this has been mown in the same way. But of course, in the foreground, you've got a few bits of dandelion, you've got the grass, you've got very little else growing because of that microclimate that's created by the building. The shadow cast by the building really causes a great difference in what actually grows, what actually continues. But that small patch that clearly never gets the shadow from the sun, considering the sun is rising in the east and sinking in but all the cardinal points of the compass in terms of where that shadow is actually cast. Quite an interesting thing to kind of track over the course of a day. And I'll certainly be going out later on today to look at this particular patch of Earth and seeing where the shadow is different, because the shadow clearly perhaps recedes a little bit as the sun changes in the sky. As we rotate the Earth, whole lots of Earth in space conversations that we need to have with children when we start to think about shadows. But I'm just really taken by the vibrant yellow of that particular patch, that vibrant yellow of that space, which is clearly just open. And naturally, when we think about things growing in the fields, when we think about things that are open, we think about the sky being completely open to that patch of ground. But particularly in our urban areas, there's a lot of spaces which are not at all able to have that full day of sun. And it's not always appropriate for them to have that full day of sun, but it's worth going around your school site, worth going around your home and thinking, right, what shadow are our buildings? What shadow is the roof? What shadow is this wall casting? Because that will really change what grows there. And if you take photographs through the course of a day, if you have a set of observations that you could take, this might be an interesting thing for you to do to build up that kind of sense of what grows where and why might things grow in certain places. Because that whole conversation that gardeners have about what we can grow here and what we can grow there and what is successful and is not is a really interesting one to have. So it might be worth tapping into any expertise that you've got local to you. That could be something that you could build into your talk curriculum. But essentially, it's about observing, it's about noticing, it's about looking at everyday spaces and looking at how those spaces interact with the buildings, interact with the urban environment, because they will cause some changes to what actually grows there. So just some thoughts for me as the second Fieldwork 5 minutes. Thanks very much for listening.